Let's get to our next guest. Former member of the Atlanta Falcons, a multi-time Pro Bowler from Evanston, Illinois, Mike Kenn. How you doing, Mike?
Doing well. Good to be on.
So why aren't you a Hall of Famer?
Well, to be honest with you, since I played more losing football games than anyone in the history of the NFL other than Sean Landetta, who's a punter, and you can't count him, I should be in just out of pure sympathy, by the way.
I would think so.
Yeah. You know what?
They don't have a wing in Canton for that?
No, they don't. But, it's, they went to the Super Bowl about 3 or 4 years after I retired. And unfortunately, Hall of Famers are, the team success has taken too much into consideration for an individual honor. I could even make the argument that it's actually harder to play at a high level with a poor cast of characters around you rather than a good cast of characters. But I don't have a vote in the matter, so I just have to sit by and hope for the best. But if it happens, great. If it doesn't, well, it did.
But you played with some great offensive linemen, though. I mean, Atlanta was always known for their line. They had you, Jeff Van Note, Brill Freilich. I mean, again, running behind that line had to be a thrill for like a William Andrews.
Yeah, when William was there, we had 3 Pro Bowlers, myself, Jeff Van Note, and R.C. Thielman, and then we had myself and Bill Freilich, and Chris Hinton was there for a while. We had another line with 3 Pro Bowlers on it. So, during my tenure, we had some pretty damn good offensive lines, not only from a run blocking, but also from a pass blocking standpoint. But unfortunately, we didn't have as many people of that caliber overall, and didn't win many football games. I mean, I only had 4 winning seasons in 17, and 3 were in the first 5 years.
That's when you had Steve Bartkowski as your quarterback.
Yeah, Steve, I think, was a rookie in 76, and then I was a rookie in 78, and got to the playoffs my rookie year as a wild card, won the division, had the best record in the NFC in 1980 when we lost to Dallas Cowboys in a game we actually had won, and then in 1982, the strike year, almost everybody made the playoffs, but we did too. We had a winning record then, and then it kind of went downhill after that.
Was it an easy transition to the NFL after playing at Michigan?
Well, from a competitive standpoint, it's that's the largest separation or largest divide that exists. I mean, it's much bigger from between high school and college, and it's much bigger from colleges to the NFL because it's 1% of the 1%. And I'll be honest with you, when I was in college, I maybe played against 2 or 3 guys that were really good. The rest of them were average or below average at best. That's not the case in the NFL, especially playing left tackle. You usually have their best athlete at the rush end position on the right side. So there were no easy days in the NFL. Some were just harder than others because of, like, if it was Lawrence Taylor or Bruce Smith or Fred Dean or Richard Dent or Chris Dolman, I mean, I could go on and on.
Who was the toughest guy you went against?
Day in and day out, the most gifted guy, and he was playing out of a 3-4, and he was a good man, and God rest his soul. A lot of people are kind of shocked when I say this, is Leroy Selman.
Okay.
Leroy was a phenomenal player, really phenomenal, and he was quite a gentleman. We had a lot of battles. We played twice every year because of geographical proximity. Even though they weren't in our division, we played them once in the preseason because they were right down there, and we always played them in the regular season for some reason. So I had to play Leroy a lot.
So what defensive lineman did you hold the most during your career, do you think?
I held every one of them within the rules of the game.
Okay, who did you get caught holding the most against?
You know what? I never got called for a lot of penalties, so I never really kept a logbook on who I held or didn't hold. But the rules allow you to play and hold within the rules, and as long as you are very specific about your hand placement, it's a huge advantage for an offensive lineman. I don't really see a lot of offensive linemen, hardly any offensive linemen, utilizing strict technique now. Most of the time they're getting themselves in positions of a disadvantage and giving the advantage to the rusher. So,
someone sent me a question and said, did you ever play in a better game than your 3-0 loss to New Trier in 1973?
One of my most disappointing games, probably the greatest game I ever played in, was college when we beat Ohio State 22-0 in Columbus. But that game at New Trier was a really disappointing game. It actually should have ended in a 3-3 tie, and it was in a mud bowl, and it was basically 3 and out in the punt, 3 and out in the punt. They got a field goal, and we finally got in a position to kick a field goal, and we actually made the field goal. But then the umpire, the referee that was standing under the goalpost, threw a flag and actually called us for a legal procedure because our kicker had his mouthpiece dangling from his face mask instead of in his mouth.
Ouch.
And then we got penalized 5 yards, and that was just outside of his distance. They missed it, and we lost 3-0. So that was a very disappointing game. But it really was not a great contest for either teams because of the conditions. And they had some good football players. One in particular they had was Clay Matthews, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Was Emery Moorhead on your team or no?
Emery is a few years older than I, so I was never on the varsity when he was there. I was in freshman, sophomore, but I know Emery real well, obviously. And he's a hometown boy, made good there, playing not only for Evanston but then for the Bears. So I was always happy to see that for Emery.
Was Joe Stewart on that Evanston team?
He was in my class. Yeah, Joe was a very gifted guy. Had a lot of speed, and we were a speed team. And I was kind of surprised that his NFL career didn't last longer than it did. And I don't really know the reasons why, but Joe was as talented of a player that I played with, and it just didn't work out for him, unfortunately. He was a little undersized for running back, so they tried to play him at wide receiver, and maybe that was it. He was kind of in between and then really couldn't play either one that well. Because back in those days, running backs had a tendency to be a little bit bigger than 205 pounds. So.
And then I see during your career you became president of the NFLPA. How did that happen? And did you enjoy that?
Actually, I look very fondly upon my time and tenure with the NFLPA, and I've always had the personality. If I'm going to be involved in something, I'd rather be at the front of the line than sitting on the bench. And so I got involved following actually Jeff Van Note's footsteps, became an alternate rep, player rep, executive committee member, then president. In fact, I was president the first time that we decided to decertify, and I was actually president when we signed that collective bargaining agreement back in, I think, in 92. It actually has my signature on it. So I was involved in 2 strikes and, a whole lot of contentious meetings for a very long time. But I met a lot of great guys. I have more friends from my days being involved with the NFLPA than I did as an Atlanta Falcon, to be honest with you.
What do you make of these labor negotiations, whether it's the NFL or the NBA? It just seems out of control.
No, it's just part of business. I mean, there's labor negotiations in general business and in public business on a regular basis. It's just a part of doing business. I mean, a lot of people try to disparage the players and the owners, saying it's a bunch of millionaires crying, arguing over money. But professional careers don't last that long. I was rare. I played till I was almost 40. Most of the guys, 3.5 years in the NFL. If you get to year 5, it's like 7. But most of the guys are done either by the time they're 30 or early 30s, and if they weren't watching their money, they didn't make enough money to live another 50, 60 years till they were 80 or 90 years old. So, they're paid whatever the market bears. And, every NFL team right now is not saying they're not making money. Their argument was they're not making enough. So it's not like basketball or baseball to a certain degree, but it's a funny thing. Every time a basketball team, baseball team, or football team gets sold, it's always at a higher price than the last time somebody purchased it.
Yeah,
so
curious how that works.
Yeah.
Dave Pear and Carl Eller have been real outspoken about the former players not getting enough in pension benefits. What happened with the last negotiation? Has there been an increase, or no one knows what the retired players got?
There's going to be an increase, but nobody knows yet. They're still in discussions about it. One of the problems with the Burt Bell Pete Rozelle plan is that it was underfunded. Because of the recent downfall in the market, it's not funded. I think that 82% is considered a fully funded pension plan, and we're down in the low 70s. So I don't know how much of that money, that $660 million, is going to be used just to go ahead and bring it back into fully funded status, and then how much is that going to be used to increase the pre-94 or pre-92 players. It's been speculated that it'd be $100 per year of accredited season, but it was supposed to have been done 60 days ago, and it still hasn't been agreed upon. So I'm not sure what's going on, to be honest with you.
Did you try to take care of the former players when you were the president of the NFLPA?
We did every time. We reached back to the pre-59ers. We did every time I was president. Was it as much as should have been? No, but it was as much as we could at the time. There wasn't as much money in the game then as there is today. But, what people have to realize is that for any additional increase in the retired player's benefit, the modern-day player has to take less. And they probably should. And they took less in this collective bargaining agreement overall, for some better working conditions. But there definitely needs to be an increase. I think that moving forward, they need to continue to go ahead and attempt to increase it. But this is a 10-year agreement, so I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity for them to address it again in the next 10 years. That's a long time.
You should have been the commissioner after Gene Upshaw, and I don't understand why they didn't give it to you.
I don't, I put my name in the hat. I was honored to, I think, make the top 5 or 4, but that wasn't the case. I ran because I was worried about the legacy of the NFL and the players that it represents, past, present, and future. But the modern day players wanted to move in a different direction than myself, and that's their decision.
Because the last offensive lineman who ran it was a disaster, from what I heard.
Well, that's people's opinion, but you know what? Gene Upshaw did some tremendous things for the NFLPA. When I hired him in 1982, we were about, $3.5 or $5.5 million in debt, and they went into this negotiation with a war chest of about $300 million, and they owned their own building in Washington, D.C. That was quite the turnaround, and that was all happened under Gene Upshaw's leadership. So a lot of the criticism that is levied at him is not justifiable. Those are former players who just don't understand exactly, where we were, how it happened, and how we got there. And football players, for a tendency, have to end up being bitter anyway because, things never really end the way that you want them to in your professional athletic career. I was one of the few ones that got to choose when I retire. 99% of the guys are told their time is over. It either happens by injury or, hey, you've gotten too old, or they found somebody better. And that's always kind of a bitter reality to have to accept. And a lot of players just don't accept it, but that's the way it is.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Kenn. It was a pleasure talking to you.
You two, y'all be good up there.
We'll try.